Hello and welcome back to Commercial Radio. So in the previous lesson, what we did is we looked at power spots and brand ambassadors in detail. And we said you get two different types of power spots. The first of which is an unendorsed power spot, the second one of which is an endorsed power spot, and that's where brand ambassadors also come in. So a power spot overall is something that is very similar to a live read, in that it's information that's being conveyed on air by the presenter. The difference is that the presenter is not reading a script that's been given through, but rather taking talking points and restructuring it such a way as to deliver it on air in a way that they feel it would be most effective. It's really important to look at the type of product that you pair with a presenter, because someone who will be a great brand ambassador will be someone who has a natural affinity to that product or that service. And a power spot can be anything from 60 seconds up until 3 minutes long. And brands normally choose power spots when they are focusing on impact rather than the frequency specifically. Power spots can be quite expensive, and an endorsed power spot even more so than an unendorsed power spot. Unendorsed power spot simply means that I am not presenting the content as in the first person. So this means that I'm not personally endorsing the brand. I'm saying I've heard that this is a great brand. I'm not saying that I know it's a great brand. As soon as I say I know it's a great brand, I stand behind it. That's an endorsed power spot, and that's a lot more expensive depending on which other elements are also being included, because a presenter is being paid a fee for the endorsement and the station is being paid. So both are being paid when it comes to endorsed power spots. And before that, we spoke about promotions and competitions, and we spoke about how valuable this type of on-air content is, because they drive engagement with listeners. So promotions and competitions drive engagement. You get big promotions, or rather large-scale promotions like a festival, where you need to put time aside for listeners to be able to buy tickets. And then you get smaller scale promotions, for instance, prize giveaways or talent appearances. And here you only need 2 or 3 weeks in your plan. So when it comes to promotion, there's no amount of detail that is too much. You need to include absolutely everything that you'll do, whether it's on air, on social media, etc. Everything needs to be included and needs to be conveyed to the client, to ensure that the promotion goes according to what was promised to the client. When we look at a competition, on the other hand, a competition package can consist of either 2 or 3 segments. The first being a pre-competition promotion, the second being the on-now promotion or the on-air promotion, and the third being the post-competition promotion. So the post-competition promotion you'll only get when a competition was really, really successful, and you want to drive the fact that you did this competition, firstly for the listeners to be able to hear what type of competitions you put out for them. Secondly, for extra brand awareness for the client. Thirdly, if you as a listener are not a frequent listener, you don't always listen at the same time, it's to tell you that this specific competition is finished also. So a pre-competition promotion then is the pre-promos, as I call it. So it's either the pre-recorded promotion or the live read promotion that'll run the week prior, a week or 2 weeks prior to the actual competition being on air. And then the actual on now section of it, or the on air promotion, is the actual week of the competition, where the actual competition entry process will be executed on air during the relevant shows. But also you'll have a promotion running in conjunction in the same week, to encourage people who have entered unsuccessfully to try again, and to motivate listeners who haven't entered yet. And then before that, we spoke about interviews in detail, and sponsorships and branded content, of which the difference was sponsorships is content that already exists that clients can sponsor. Branded content does not exist yet, so it's co-created through the brand and the radio station, okay? And all of that leads us up to where we are today, because it's all content pieces that we can find on the radio at any point. But specifically today, what we will be talking about is OBs, so outside broadcasts, and crossings. All right, so just to recap briefly what we spoke about, we said that promotions and competitions improve listener loyalty because listeners stand to be satisfied immediately, either by winning a prize or achieving recognition on air or online. We recapped on FABI, and I asked you to remember to utilize FABI when you're developing your content-based promotion. And then you need to look at the type of competition, the type of campaign that it is you will be running, and how much time you need to promote it, okay? So big festival or concert, about 3 months. Smaller campaign where smaller promotion, like only a giveaway or a talent appearance, about 2 to 3 weeks. Each promotion needs to be linked to how much advertising revenue it will generate. Each promotion should have a price tag attached to it for the client. No amount of detail is too much in the plotting of a promotion. Every on-air moment should be planned out with a checklist. And this will then ensure that the promotion goes according to what was promised to the client. You get a pre-competition promotion, an on-air promotion, and a post-competition promotion. The pre-competition promotion could be a live read or a pre-recorded promotion that will speak about the competition that will be executed in the following week. This builds the audience up to listen out for the competition, and it provides a window of time for listeners to enter and for participants to be pre-screened. We mentioned that pre-screening is important for various different reasons, depending on the brand. Then we mentioned that you need to ensure that prizes are at the station prior to the competition running, or you need to make 100% sure that prizes won't expire, won't change, and won't become unavailable. Your on-air promotion is the actual week of the competition, where you are still running promos to encourage people who didn't win to enter again, to try again, and to motivate people who haven't entered yet to try. This is also the week in which the actual competition will take place. So as an on-air personality, there are different life cycles that I go through, which starts with the introduction phase. After that, I move into the growth phase, and then I get to a point where I'm at the maturity phase. And here, my listeners are extremely loyal, and they're not going anywhere, okay? So for me to now personally endorse a product when I am at the mature phase of being a presenter is extremely valuable to any brand, okay, or any advertiser. So if you want to open your textbook, we'll be looking at page 349 to 362 today. So outside broadcasts, or as I'll continue calling them for the duration of the lecture, OBs, involve broadcasting a show or a series of shows from a venue away from the studio, okay? So in essence, what it is you are taking your studio away from the actual on-air studio. So OBs can serve a dual purpose as both a marketing tool for a radio station as well as a commercial asset for brands to tap into. However, they are often misunderstood, okay? So let's see why I say that. What are my reasonings? If we start by looking at OBs as a marketing tool for a station, the listener's relationship with a radio station is largely dictated by what they hear. So in essence, the music, the competitions, the different types of features that you run. OBs offer listeners a chance to see and engage with their favorite personalities in person and to build on their radio relationships, okay? So that's why people like outside broadcasts. A good bond is improved through one-on-one interaction and conversations, which can increase listener loyalty by making the relationship feel personal, because I am now seeing my favorite presenter in person. As a marketing tool, outside broadcasts are generally accompanied by an event, okay? So something like an activation or a promotion that makes leaving the studio more valuable. If the station has decided to broadcast the show from a venue outside of the studio, they will create a cause to do so. It could be a birthday celebration, a music festival, an important political moment. But the primary purpose of us doing an outside broadcast is to give the audience an inside view as to what it looks like, okay, who the presenters are, and to build up public relationships. So for the most part, the format of the show will remain unchanged, because when I do an outside broadcast, in essence, what I'm doing is I'm taking my show as is and taking it just to a different venue, which means that the format and the songs and things will still stay the same. Some of my features might shift around or change or just be taken off completely to make way for perhaps extra brand advertising or extra brand interviews, but that's about as much as it'll change. So the features, the content, and the interactions that the listeners are familiar with are still delivered, but the show will incorporate interaction with a live audience instead of interaction over the phone or the social or over social media. So obviously the sound will just be different because we're in a live location. OBs also have a different sound quality because of this live location, and the microphones pick up the background noise from the events. So even if you can't be there, if you can't be present, you can still feel like you are attending the event, purely because of the noise, the ambience that is being put out on air. So that was a marketing tool. If we look at OBs as a commercial tool, shows aren't typically for sale, yes, but it's possible. But it is possible for a brand to take over and fully brand a specific show at the discretion of the station, obviously. In cases where there's an agreement to do an outside broadcast show for a client, there will be a cost attached. And the brand essentially buys the opportunity to have the show broadcast from a venue of their choice, bearing in mind the technical restrictions and the approval of the technical team. So technical team will have to go out and suss out the venue and make sure they have everything that they need to be able to broadcast at the specific venue. The venue may be at the brand's head office or at a venue specific to a campaign or an event. So, for example, at a mall, you get a lot of outside broadcasts at new store openings, whether it's a retail store or something like a clothing store. And then, like if it's a restaurant opening or a restaurant's birthday or a big event that's being held at a restaurant, you can also do OBs there, or a bar or festivals, or a show or exhibitions. There's a lot of different places where outside broadcasts can be held. This allows the brand to have their radio campaign further integrated into the content and to showcase it tangibly or emotively. What sometimes can happen though is that brands can sometimes mistake an outside broadcast as being an event itself that will naturally attract people to their venue. However, a radio show on its own is not dynamic enough to attract a live audience, okay? Think about if you just hear there's an outside broadcast, will you go down to visit the outside broadcast just because they are there? Probably not. An OB can benefit listeners who are not present, and the content from the OB is very valuable, yes, but it's only media promotion still at the end of the day and on-air branding, and it's not designed to be the main attraction, okay? That's not the whole reason behind an outside broadcast. So if we look at a figure that lists factors for both marketing and the commercial teams to consider when you're managing an OB, it looks as follows. And these are key considerations for planning an outside broadcast. It's not a case of a client just going in and deciding they want an outside broadcast purely because it's an outside broadcast, okay? There are things that needs to be taken into consideration. For example, what is the reason? Why do you want an OB? What benefit does this outside broadcast give to the station, the brand, and the listener? So that's the three we're looking at, okay? So we're looking at the brand, the station, and the listener. The time and the place. So the location and the time must complement each other and be appropriate for the audience and the brand. So normally an outside broadcast would take place the same time as the main event, okay, of whatever it is. So if it's a store opening, the hours that you think will be the busiest is when you'll have the outside broadcast. Or if it's a race, or if it's a concert, probably as it's building up so that you can tell people to still come through and still come join us, that kind of a thing. So you're not going to have an outside broadcast when the event is almost finished, or before the event has started when there's no one there yet. And then the listener experience is extremely important. What activities will accompany the outside broadcast to keep listeners engaged and excited? How are we still keeping the listeners? And then obviously we look at advertising. How will the message about the event be distributed to the listeners to attract them to the event? How are we getting them here? Technical needs. Can the proposed venue accommodate the technical needs of a radio show? So depending on whether it's a commercial radio show or a community radio show, there are different factors to take into consideration about things that you need. But there are a lot of technical needs that need to be met. And then lastly, preparation. Ensure presenters and DJs have everything they need to deliver the show smoothly and professionally. Just doing crossings or crossovers. You might have heard this before, where a presenter might say, I'm coming to you live from XYZ, wherever they are at that specific time, whether it's a rally or an event or a concert or an opening. A lot of competitions also might have crossings worked into it, depending on the type of competition that it might be. So crossing is when a presenter or a radio ambassador attends an event that is relevant to the audience and the studio cuts across to the presenter during the normal broadcast schedule to deliver news from that event. Crossings are a great asset to enable a radio station to be represented in several places and deliver the atmosphere of events without having to physically be there. So a lot like an outside broadcast, these crossings can be used as a marketing and a commercial tool. Crossings, though, are far more cost-effective than outside broadcasts, and they don't require as much preparation and planning and technical setup. Obviously, just think about it. When you're doing a crossing, what do you need? A phone. You don't need much else. Whereas if you do an outside broadcast, you literally need to do a whole studio setup there. Whether it's a big studio setup or a small studio setup, it still costs money. A crossing is a valuable option for a busy event where a station wants to capture a lot of content from multiple locations at the same time, or when multiple radio stations want to represent at the same event. Just think about it, that would never work out. If every commercial station in South Africa, and they are between 30 and 35, if they all wanted to be to broadcast from the same event using an outside broadcast, there wouldn't be enough space or technical infrastructure or even access to the key people to ensure that they could gather a quality content and produce a valuable show. Instead, they can each send a reporter and possibly a producer to take pictures and to share content via social media and to cross back to the studio for the presenter to do live on air. When a station agrees to a crossing, some of the parameters involved in doing an OB are also at play. The most prominent of these is listener relevance. Program managers are interested in knowing the content from the in knowing how the content from the event will provide value to the listeners. When crossings are being exploited commercially, the nature of the content is often enhanced to encourage listeners to stay tuned or to stay tuned or to go to the event for a limited opportunity. If used correctly, outside broadcasting crossings can enhance a campaign and its impact on the listeners. They should be approached with careful planning and consideration in order to maximize revenue and value, but are profitable methods that can enhance a radio station's programming, promote its shows and presenters, and provide diverse and exciting offers for clients. What I would like you to do for me for homework is to look at figure 9.3, so the one that we went through, this one, and plan an outside broadcast unit using it as a commercial tool. Okay. So let's say, for instance, let's put a brand to it, any brand. You can take any client, okay? So whether it's Discovery's cycle race, which every year 947 is at, or whether it's a big festival where Metro FM is at, or whatever it might be. What I want you to do is to think of it in terms of a commercial tool, thinking of the reason, the time and the place, the listener experience, advertising, technical needs, and preparation behind it, as to why it is that you would do this specific OB, okay? And then from here, what we're going to be looking at in the next lesson, which it will be part 7 in this 8-part series, is integrated campaigns, both, so whether it's a normal integrated campaign or whether it's a digital integration, okay? We're going to be looking at both. And then just to give you an idea of what an outside broadcast could look like, this is believe it or not, this is an outside broadcasting, an outside broadcast that's taking place here. So this was part of Heritage Tour. I think this was part of last year's Heritage Tour for the 5 Drive team. Okay, so you can see he's literally using. To see they have minimal equipment here, but this is all you need technically to do an outside broadcast on location. Okay, so it can look anything from this to massively big with all the speakers and with the big minivan and everything, etc. Okay, so it purely depends on the type of outside broadcast that you are doing. And these can be, at the end of the day, these can be integrated into a much bigger campaign with a couple of other elements, depending on what it is, depending on what the client's needs are. So in today's life, okay, so the way that we live today and the way that we structure our radio campaigns today, we no longer simply just make an advertising spot and put that out on air. Okay, so no longer do we just have generic schedules that's running. Like all types of advertising, radio advertising has become way more sophisticated. And there are now more ways in which radio stations can create campaigns by using various communities online and on the ground and on the ground to communicate the messages of their clients. As you would have seen in the past couple of lessons, so the previous 6 lessons up until now, everything that we spoke about was different types of airtime that can be sold. So everything from sponsorships and competitions to power spots to brand ambassadors to branded content to outside broadcasts, okay, to crossings, etc. Generic spots. Integrated radio campaigns are designed to carefully manage campaign messaging across multiple types of media, which in some cases means partnering with other media. So whether that's TV shows or magazines or other news outlets or digital news outlets, etc., to secure an even wider audience. The art of developing an integrated radio campaign is based in developing a wide variety of communication activities, tools and techniques in order to deliver a coordinated and consistent message to the audience and to achieve the goal that the advertiser has set. That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day, okay? Is to reach the goals that the advertiser has set. If you look at that picture, that's on your PowerPoint slide right now. That picture is there for you to get a sense of the size and the scale that an integrated marketing communication plan can have. So that image maps out the number of different platforms or touch points that a consumer can use to engage with the brand. It's important to bear in mind that not even a radio station or every advertising client will have access to all of these. It is important though that when radio stations design integrated campaigns, they consider all of the touch points they do have access to in order to communicate with as wide a section of the target audience as possible. So you might want to run an integrated campaign that makes use of, for instance, Twitter and Messenger and mobile messaging and perhaps email, perhaps a mailer. Maybe you're connecting it to games, okay? So to advertising in games. There's so many things that you can do with it. It purely depends on the touch points that you have access to and what it is that your client or what it is that the client at the end of the day wants. Okay, so if we have a look quickly at what you should know by now with regards to everything that we've gone through in chapter 9, you should be able to explain the procedures and methods involved in radio spots, or albeit radio commercials. You should be able to identify the aspects of partnerships between media outlets and radio stations, including individual and show sponsorships. You should also be able to identify the aspects of partnerships between media outlets, power spots, and presenters. And then you should be able to describe the various methods of getting revenue through brand ambassadors. And then we've looked at the potential pitfalls for stations and individuals. And then what we just did now was outside broadcast. So you should now be able to explain the procedures and methods of getting revenue through outside broadcasts. And then we're down to the last 3, which we're going to be doing in the next 2 lessons, which are explain how digital platforms can be integrated into on-air products to derive revenue. Explain how online presence can cross-promote individuals and media outlets with reference to examples. Okay, so you should be able to give me examples. And then lastly, discuss how an event or an activation can make revenue for a client, okay? How it can be a revenue advantage for a client. And then after that, we're done with chapter 9. So we're almost at the end of this, okay? And with that, I'm going to say goodbye for now until our next lecture. Bye.